if you look at this data, it's just mind-blowing. So obviously non-smokers that have a high omega-3 index of 8% or more have the highest life expectancy. But when you look at smokers with a high omega-3 index, they have the same life expectancy as non-smokers with a low omega-3 index.
This is Dr. Rhonda Patrick. She has a PhD in biomedical science and years of groundbreaking research on aging, cancer, and nutrition. In today's video, you'll learn which essential micronutrients are most important for living a long, healthy life, according to Dr. Rhonda Patrick's cutting-edge research. We'll break down how these tiny nutrients support everything from your brain and heart to your energy levels and immune system. Plus, we'll give you simple tips on how to add them to your diet so you can start feeling the benefits right away. So at first, let's discover how important omega-3, magnesium, and vitamin D actually are.
Having low omega-3 or having a low omega-3 index was like smoking. And when I say you look the life expectancy, if you look at the graph in the publication, the curves like overlay perfectly. It's kind of freakish where you're like, whoa, like the people that are smoking, but they're getting a lot of omega-3 have the same like life expectancy as these people that don't smoke, but have very low omega-3. And that's kind of like, I like talking about that because I feel like it puts it in perspective for people because like I said, no one's really thinking about, I'm not eating my fish today. I'm not supplementing with an omega-3 supplement to get that those omega-3s, you know. But people are thinking about, oh, I shouldn't smoke because it's bad, right? So again, it goes back to that framework of thinking about what you need and starting there, as opposed to like just like, okay, what should I avoid? Because when you think about what should I avoid, then you're not like, people aren't thinking about magnesium. They're not thinking about, you know, the vitamin K. They're not thinking about omega-3. And by the way, magnesium, you know, I said about half the population in the United States doesn't get enough. They're not eating enough greens. And unfortunately, there's not a great test for magnesium because our body stores magnesium in our bones. And so anytime we're not getting enough in our diet, our body pulls it out of our bones to like, because we need it. It's so important. You need it to make energy. Like without magnesium, you can't make energy. So nothing's going to function. But you also, it's needed to repair damage. Like every time you have, you know, like right now, you and I, we're having a conversation, you know, neurotransmitters are firing, we're thinking about things like that's causing damage. Metabolism, all that stuff causes damage on a daily basis, but our body repairs that damage. But magnesium is a cofactor for these enzymes. These are proteins that are doing everything for that to function properly. And so if you don't get enough of that magnesium to do that, what happens is you don't repair that damage properly, and that can increase the risk of getting a mutation that can lead to cancer. And so there's all sorts of studies that have looked at magnesium intake in cancer. And, you know, it's been found that, for example, for every 100, milligram increase in magnesium intake, there's something like a 20% decrease in pancreatic cancer risk. And there's been lots of studies like this looking at magnesium intake and cancer risk. And so the higher the magnesium intake, the lower the cancer risk. So again, it's one of those things where you can't look in the mirror and go, as you're brushing your teeth, oh, I don't have enough magnesium today, right? Like nothing's like showing you that, but it's happening. That damage is insidious. And I mentioned you pull it out of your bone, like it's pulled out of your bones. And that's another thing. It leads to osteoporosis over time. So investing in magnesium, so in other words, remembering to eat your leafy greens is getting your magnesium. So women need about, I'd say about 320 milligrams a day. Adult women need about 320 milligrams a day of magnesium. Men need around 420 milligrams a day. This can change based on your physical activity level as well. So like if you're physically active, if you're sweating, you sweat out magnesium, you also use it up for energy. So you might actually require anywhere between 10% to 20% more. So, again, and people aren't even meeting that. So investing in magnesium is like a way, you can think about it like also for bone health because if you are getting enough magnesium on a daily basis, you're not going to be pulling it out of your bones. And therefore, magnesium is important for your bones. And so as you keep doing that year after year after year, it dramatically increases osteoporosis risk, right? So there's lots of reasons to invest in, these micronutrients and to think about the foods that you need to eat. So vitamin D, we didn't, people might be wondering, you're talking about all these important micronutrients. Why aren't we talking about vitamin D? Well, food is not a great source of it. Like you can find, like it is fortified in some fatty foods. Unfortunately, it's fortified with the wrong form. It's fortified with D2 rather than D3, which is what we make in our skin from the sun. So vitamin D is the primary source of it is, as you mentioned, it's from the sun, and specifically it's UVB radiation from the sun. And why do I point that out? Because that is really important, because UVB radiation only occurs during certain times of the year. The other thing that regulates the production of vitamin D3 from the sun is age. So the older you get, less, I would say, efficient your body is at making vitamin D3 from the sun. So for example, a 70-year-old makes like 4 times less than their 20-year-old former self. And then bioavailability of vitamin D3 is important as well, and that's regulated by body mass and weight. So you make vitamin D3 in your skin, but it gets released into your bloodstream, then it's converted into another form that is actually not a vitamin, it's a steroid hormone. So vitamin D is actually much more important. It's not just a vitamin, it's actually a hormone that our body needs. So basically, the more body fat you have, the less bioavailable vitamin D3 is. And so you actually need more vitamin D3, the more body fat that you have. So this hormone is extremely important because it is regulating about 5% of the human genome, the protein encoding human genome. So it's doing a lot of things. And you can imagine, so what it does, there's actually a little sequence inside of our DNA it's a little repeat sequence that vitamin D recognizes. And it, like this whole complex of vitamin D and a receptor goes down and binds that little sequence of DNA, and it turns on a gene or it turns off a gene. And it does it in a very coordinated manner. And when you don't have enough vitamin D, that stuff all goes wrong. And so lots of things can happen. Because of sunscreen, because of our modern day lifestyles, we're inside technology, we're on our computers, less farming, less agricultural work out in the sun, we're indoors. Majority of people are not getting enough vitamin D3. And so something around 70% of the US population is insufficient in vitamin D3. So that is defined as having blood levels of vitamin D less than 30 nanograms per milliliter. Another percentage of the population is deficient, so they'd be less than 20 nanograms per milliliter.
Here's a big question when it comes to staying healthy. Should we rely on supplements or stick to getting our nutrients from real food? We hear a lot about vitamins in pills, powders, and capsules, but can they really replace the nutrients found in whole foods? In this segment, we're diving into what science says about getting essential micronutrients through supplements versus natural foods.
It is bound to it's like the fiber matrix, it's called phytate. That does decrease the bioavailability of it. But you can do things like you cook your greens, so you can do raw, but also cooking them will increase the bioavailability of minerals like magnesium. So you can do things, and it is good. You want to kind of get a variety of things. You want to have some raw veggies, but you also want to have cooked. And when you cook it does actually increase the bioavailability of not just magnesium, other minerals as well that are bound to that fiber matrix which has phytate there. Supplementation is also kind of tricky with respect to magnesium because it can be an irritant on the gut as well. And so you don't really absorb more. I mean, it's about 100, I would say anywhere between 120 to 150 milligrams per dose. Like once you get above that, you're not really absorbing more. You're just kind of causing more GI distress. And it's a little bit of like a laxative effect. So some people actually use it specifically for that reason. So they do higher doses above 150 milligrams because they're looking for that effect. But generally speaking, if you are supplementing with magnesium, you want to make sure you're going at a lower dose because you're not really going to absorb more, and it's just going to cause like GI distress, more gut issues. And if you are going to supplement, if you want to supplement with more than just 150, you have to spread your doses out. So it's like take it earlier with the meal and then take it later in the day as well. So the other thing is that when you're getting it from food, it is packaged in with other minerals. EPA and DHA are the marine forms of the omega-3. And those are the ones I was talking about with the omega-3 index and life expectancy. Those are the forms that have been used in randomized controlled trials with supplementation that have decreased, cardiovascular events by like 25% compared to placebo. Those are the ones that are important. They're only in the really oily fatty fish. One of the best forms is salmon, and wild salmon has higher levels than farmed. And on top of that, the wild, for example, wild Alaskan salmon is probably one of the best salmons to consume for omega-3. It also has astaxanthin. It's what gives the fish that pink color. And so because they're eating a lot of those little like crustaceans and stuff that make that it's a carotenoid. If you are eating quite a lot of fish, you'd have to really get an omega-3 index test to know for sure how much you require. But, I would say probably like at least, you're eating it 4 times a week, which most people do not do. In Japan, they do, and their omega-3 index is very high. Like, I don't even know if many Japanese supplement. They eat seafood like every day. So, you can get your omega-3s from fish. Now, the other thing to consider is, well, what type of fish? So we talked about oily and fatty fish, but also you want to look at contaminants. Like larger fish have things like PCBs and mercury because they're eating smaller fish. So those things accumulate in their fat. So like you don't want to eat swordfish, for example. It's just the mercury in swordfish is just through the roof, right? Isn't very good. So again, that's where salmon comes into the picture because it's very low in mercury. It's high in omega-3. Smaller fish, so sardines would be another one. Again, very low in these contaminants like mercury and higher in omega-3s. And there's a lot of data out there that you can look up, like USDA has all this like contamination mercury levels versus omega-3. So that stuff is easy for people to find. I would say by and large, the easiest way to get a high omega-3 index is definitely to supplement. And fish oil supplements, generally speaking, if you're taking around 2 grams a day of a fish oil supplement, that is enough to raise someone from a 4% omega-3 index, which is the low end, to a 8% omega-3 index, which is the high end. And that's relatively easy to do, take 2 grams a day. Now, you said, can I just walk into the store and buy any supplement? Well, yeah, of course you can do whatever you want, but let's talk about, what to look for in omega-3 supplement, right? So you obviously want to make sure you're getting enough of the EPA and DHA, those 2 important omega-3s. And you want to make sure you're not getting a high contaminant level like mercury, PCBs. But the other thing to keep in mind is you'd want a low oxidation level. So omega-3 fatty acids are prone to oxidation just because their molecular structure, it's a polyunsaturated fatty acid. And so the way companies, are manufacturing this fish oil matters.
Now, let's get ready to kickstart your morning with the ultimate smoothie. Dr. Rhonda Patrick shows greatest of all-time smoothie recipe. We'll break down what goes into a truly healthy smoothie, packed with essential nutrients for energy, focus, and overall health. Dr. Patrick will evaluate each ingredient in Shane's blend, highlighting what's great, what could be better, and the simple tweaks to make it even more powerful.
Typically, the smoothie is about, 4 or so kale leaves. And that's usually my green source that I use. And so I'm getting the magnesium, I'm getting the vitamin K, I'm getting the folate, but I'm also getting something in there called lutein and zeaxanthin, these are carotenoids, much like beta carotene or astaxanthin, like we were talking about. It's another one that accumulates in the eye, rods and cones of the eye, so it helps prevent macular degeneration, but it accumulates in the brain as well. You're getting more of the lutein and zeaxanthin. You're basically making them more bioavailable by adding the avocado. Also, it's a great source of monounsaturated fat. Avocados are high in potassium. Something like 96% of the US population doesn't get enough potassium. And so that's another thing you're getting from avocados. I personally like it because it makes the smoothie creamy. And then I add a ton of frozen blueberries. And blueberries are, yes, you're getting your vitamin C and you're getting some fermentable fiber for the gut, but they're also high in those phytochemicals. So they have polyphenols in them and they have anthocyanins. And these things they're like superpowers for the brain. So there's been so many studies that have been done, randomized controlled trials, either with freeze-dried blueberry extract or actually just blueberries, showing it improves cognition. It improves mood. So when I was a postdoc, I did some studies in people. We were looking at freeze-dried blueberry powder. I was looking at DNA damage in their blood cells. So markers of those double-stranded breaks I talked about, like if you don't get enough folate, it causes double-stranded breaks. And it's hard to get the protein requirement for me. So I usually do some whey protein. And then I also add a little bit of hydrolyzed collagen powder as well. So there's some studies showing, If you're getting the protein, you probably don't need the hydrolyzed collagen powder. But there's studies showing that randomized controlled trials showing that it improves like skin elasticity, and things that I'm also interested in addition. And with respect to skin, I mean, there's all sorts of studies also showing it helps with joint health and this and that. I mean, so I don't know. I like adding that as well. And then the other thing I add is I do a little bit of moringa powder. So moringa it's a plant. It's high in some micronutrients, like it has things like zinc and iron and magnesium, but it also has something in it that is called moringagen that is very similar to sulforaphane, which is found in like broccoli sprouts. It's really high in broccoli sprouts. And it activates genetic pathways in our body, the same ones that sulforaphane activates, that have been shown to increase antioxidants in the brain, like glutathione, that have been shown to lower DNA damage in our cells, all sorts of benefits. But the other thing that it does, and I've noticed this, so I used to wear a continuous glucose monitor like for years. And it blunts the postprandial glucose rise from a smoothie when I put moringa powder in it. And I reached out to an expert, Dr. Jed Fahey, who's done a lot of research on, these compounds. And I was like, have you seen anything? And he's like, oh yeah, this is being explored. He like totally knew about it. And as you look into the literature, you can start to find some studies on moringa actually improving blood glucose levels.
Okay, so we discovered a recipe for a perfect smoothie. But overall, what are the top 3 lifestyle changes that can truly boost your health and longevity? In this segment, Dr. Rhonda Patrick reveals her top behavioral and diet interventions for a longer, healthier life.
At the very least, doing 4,000 IUs a day of vitamin D3. As you mentioned, it's like the cheapest supplement. It's something like a penny a pill. It's like the most affordable thing to do. And then making sure you're eating your greens and getting your protein. So like thinking about the magnesium, and then the 1.2 grams per kilogram body weight a day are the biggest bang for your buck, I think. And then with respect to behavioral exercise, and particularly doing a good amount of high intensity exercise, and we didn't get so much into it, but it really is one of the most important things that you can do. I mean, there's studies showing that people just doing 1 to 3 minutes of like getting their heart rate up to 80% max heart rate for like 1 to 3 minutes 3 times a week is associated with like a 50% reduction in all-cause mortality and cancer-related mortality. So it's easy to do. Like you can do that, right? You can just get up and do 3 minutes, like it's not that challenging. So getting that high intensity exercise. Also, I mean, resistance training and muscle mass, super important. Like you need to be building that muscle mass and maintaining it, because you get to a point when you start to get older and all of a sudden you have an event where you got influenza, whatever, and then you're not working out, you lose so much muscle, and you get a couple of those stacked on over a couple of years, and then all of a sudden you can't walk, your mobility goes down, and then the curve just drops, right? So resistance training is extremely important. And if you're doing those 2 things, you're probably going to be, maintaining a healthy body weight, because at the end of the day, calories in, calories out does matter, right? So if you're doing the exercise and the resistance training, and you're kind of focusing on like getting the proper micronutrients from your veggies and protein intake, you're probably not going to be eating all the junk. But then on the last thing I would say, behavioral wise, I would add sauna in, or deliberate heat exposure. I think that's huge for a lot of reasons. For the cardiovascular reasons, there's mental health effects, as we talked about. There's also other brain effects. Dementia risk is lower as well, and then muscle atrophy. You can do the deliberate heat exposure to help prevent muscle atrophy as well. So I think those are the 3 behavioral changes. And by the way, exercise can forgive a lot of sins, including lack of sleep. So that's why I start with that. And I don't make the sleep the most important. I actually think it's exercise.
In conclusion, these essential micronutrients might be small, but their impact on our health and longevity is huge. As Dr. Rhonda Patrick has shown us, adding key nutrients like vitamin D, magnesium, and omega-3s into our daily routines can support everything from our brain to our bones, helping us live longer, healthier lives. Remember, these nutrients aren't just about avoiding deficiencies. They're about empowering our bodies to thrive. So whether you're boosting your diet with colorful fruits and veggies, spending time outdoors, or choosing the right supplements, each choice adds up. Start small, pick one new habit, and see how it makes you feel. Here's to a healthier, longer life. If you enjoyed this video, check out another one, Why You're Losing Hair and How to Reverse It.